to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Robert Howard online. Robert, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Mike. How about you?
I am good. Really looking forward to this conversation. You've got an amazing story and you're crushing it. And, the odds, were maybe stacked against you early on in life. But why don't you share a little bit about you and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Well, cool. Well, Mike, I can talk about me all day, but first off, I want to thank you so much, for having me here. I followed your podcast for a while, and I just want to acknowledge, how consistently is that, you deliver like the real, just no fluff value to your audience, and that takes real dedication. That, as we talked about before, a lot of commitment, and I respect that deeply. So, I'm honored to be here today. And for everybody that's listening, man, if y'all have gotten just one thing from this show, take a second to leave a 5-star review. As business owners and stuff like that goes a long way with us. Do it on your favorite platform. I know I did it, so just come join me. Now, Mike, a lot of people like they want to start investing in real estate, but they'll tend to feel overwhelmed. They short on cash, and maybe just scared of making a mistake. They tried like YouTube's university, as I call it, seminars. They even tried like doing random stuff they self calling sellers, but nothing gives them that clarity or the confidence to actually go in and take action. Well, what I do is I help brand new investors land their first deal without a cold calling or risking any kind of big money or feeling lost. I use my no risk revenue method so they can finally start building real wealth. And it's just one smart deal at a time. But I'll tell you, that's not where it all started for me at all, man. So, uh, a little bit about how it started for me is I've had the passion for a very long time. I started out maybe I'll say full time, maybe about 5 years ago, into the real estate, just kind of dibbing and dabbing a little bit. But it comes from a tough upbringing. I lived in the housing projects for a little over 13 years. You can say I was kind of a little bit of a stuck in the system kind of thing. So I didn't see, people like me having an opportunity, much of an opportunity at real wealth at all. People joking, they say, to get out, you got to be a good ball player or you end up, selling drugs, which, I tried neither of the two. Um, so from that upbringing, I was just determined. I had a lot of grit. I went on through my school years. Fortunately, I made all A's. I was a straight A student up until the time I got into ninth grade. I made my first B, and I literally, man, I cried like a baby. I did, and I'm not afraid to admit that. But that was one of the times in my life where um, I was up here and I had a little bit of letdown, and that taught me the importance of not letting my feet up off the gas. And that was straight out of being valedictorian um, of the middle school and went into high school. And I'm graduating, honors, Mu Alpha Theta, um, Honor Society, Beta Club, you name it. That was me. So it looks like I was well on my way. But then I got a little bit fast, I'll say. And I tell my kids, take your time. Don't be in a rush to get old. Because with that comes great responsibility. Straight from high school, I went into college, did literally one semester, didn't do well at all. Um, Matter of fact, I overslept and missed finals. And so going into my second semester, um, I ended up being on academic probation. For people that know what that is. Basically, they say if you didn't make the grades, they'll give you another opportunity at it. At that point, a couple things happened. I was out of my first apartment, bills and everything behind. I started to get buried. I had ran out of options and places that I can actually, borrow money from at the time. So here I am, just a young 18-year-old, fresh out of high school, semester of college under my belt and basically flunking out. So I grabbed the paper, that was a while ago, back when you'd actually look for jobs in the actual newspaper. So I grabbed the newspaper. I went looking for a job and said, hey, we're looking for salespeople. I hightailed it on down to the dealership. I went in, and this was probably one of the first turning points. I mean, there were several pivotal points along the way, but this was one of the first ones. I went in, I had my earrings in, no tie. The guy came out, he interviewed me, and he said, well, no, I take that back. He wouldn't interview me because he said, you need to go take those earrings out first. So then I went, I took my earrings out. Fast forward, I come back the same day for that job, and I get hired as a car salesman at 18 years old. So then it became, mildly lucrative, but then I got comfortable, man. You know, I got in that race. The money was good. And at that time, all you start doing is just chasing, chasing, chasing. Then I started to have kids. I had my first child, Maya. With her, I tried to be as present as I could. I don't remember missing many events, but I do remember after my 20-year career in the car business, um, I started to experience burnout. So you're talking working from maybe 8 in the morning to 9, 10 o'clock at night most days. Because in the car business, it's commission only and it's kind of can to can't. As I get further into that, um, I was warned never go into management. I ignored everybody. I went into management. Did a ton of hours, more than I was doing even as a salesperson. And again, as you're going on that hamster wheel, that money kind of just keeps you going, keeps you going, keeps you going. And then I said, you know what? I want better for myself. I was gaining weight. I was stressed out. And believe it or not, I still got some left, but I was starting to lose a lot of hair at the time too. Um, as that progressed and my daughter was starting middle school, not middle school, she was starting high school a couple of years back. She's now a senior. And I said to her, I was like, look, I know I've been there for most things, but I haven't been able to give you quality time. I said, Dad is going to find a way to do that. I told you I'd do it by the time you got in high school. So her birthday was in August. And what she didn't know is about 3 months prior, I had put in my notice to my job to tell them that I'm going to have to walk away. And for me, it was getting the new currency. The new currency I wanted was time. Because at that point, money, you get it, it only takes you so far. But the way that I was even able to walk away from that job is by starting my wholesaling career. Because it kind of was my stair step to um, building low reserves, of course, first of all, to be able to walk off your job. I tell people entrepreneurship, a lot of people think it's sexy and all that, but it is a little bit of a grit and grind that you have to go through and be willing to go through when you first starting off. For me, I went down the rabbit hole. It was after COVID and all this, and I knew at the time, although I had made a bunch of money, I blew a bunch too. So what I did is went and look and say, hey, I literally go, how can I get into real estate with no money out of pocket? I went down the rabbit hole and I ended up taking several classes, investing in a lot of education. And man, before I knew it, I had blew through probably $40,000 to $50,000 in education because I felt like I had to have everybody's course that was out there. And I just kept going and going and going. And then I started to buy leads without even knowing what it was I was looking for, what I was going to do with them when I got them. It was just, once you get caught in the weeds of things, you continue to go. And like they say, man, when you start going down that rabbit hole, it's hard to pull yourself out of it. Uh, but fortunately, I did. I went probably 9, 10 months before I even got my first deal. And that's because I really had no guidance. And I didn't get my first deal until um, I met a young lady that kind of just coached me a little bit, even after I spent all this money for the big guys. All the problems you see, all the guys, the big names, I've had the courses. So I peeled layers back and got back to what was simple and let her kind of just guide me. So from there, I started working before work. I was still a general sales manager at the time. So I'm still working 12, 14, 15-hour days. But before work, like probably we'll call it 5 to 7, I was trying to get leads, cold calling all. I did it on my lunch break and when I got home at night. So every little opportunity I had, I was investing in myself to get to that next level. And it wasn't until I found that I could replace that income before I was comfortable walking away. And like I said, even at that time, even if I were making a fraction of what I was making, uh, it would have been worth it for me. Because again, time is the new currency. And so I traded all that and it's ended up being pretty successful for me.
That's awesome, and thank you for sharing that journey with us. And yeah, it's funny how we take a long time to figure out, pardon the pun there, that time is the commodity that we want. We chase the dollars, we chase the things, we want the latest this and that, and all of that. But as we get older, we start recognizing, oh, time. Yeah, let's look at that, and we go, wait a minute. I would like to spend more time with my kids, or I'd like to spend more time with family, friends, or doing a hobby that I really enjoy. And yeah, working in auto sales, that is the grind. And whenever I'd hear people say, "I wish they were open on the weekend," it's like they're open pretty much all day during the week.
Yes.
And so you want them to work weekends too. And of course, many dealerships have added those hours, but it's like people need to eat and sleep, and it's a tough grind. And of course, I know during the pandemic that was uh, really tough on auto sales. It doesn't matter if it was used, because used car market was booming, so people are trying to get cars. And then I remember the dealerships around me, for months, that were literally empty.
Yeah, yeah.
It had that look like on a Sunday where they were going to repave the parking lot. That's what it looked like every day of the week, but there were just no cars there because
I said
it
that. Yeah, there's like just tumbleweeds were gonna pass through. So
pretty much. And it was, I saw that, and of course, my dad worked for Generous Motors. That's our nickname in our house. So actually, my dad, my grandfather, and my great grandfather all worked for them. Ironically, so a long history with GM. But I knew he knew the industry. Dad, loved cars, bought cars a lot. Did all that thing. So I remember many times growing up being in the dealership and sitting around, but understanding what that role is like, with it being commission based. Uh, my heart, especially during the pandemic, really went out to those folks because like they can't, they can't sell anything. There's nothing to sell. And it's like, what, how, okay, we can do an order for you, but no one knew when that stuff was going to show up. And it was such a, oh man, it was such a crazy time. So, you were, obviously very wise and have been, for a good chunk of your life because you were able to figure out how to overcome those early years and the challenges and figure out how do I, get out of this system and do something for me. And you did. And it's, yeah, when you mentioned a moment ago about, when you got your first B, how devastating that was. And I know a lot of students that were just constantly straight A students. I was an A and B student, so if I got a B, I was like, okay. The occasional C would show up, and I'm like, that teacher's delusional. It's just, I was just like, what the heck? But it, it's you strive for personal excellence, and that is that is a trait that is in your DNA and that's never going to leave you. And that's one, it's a great role model for your kids and for society to look at that. So you realize that you're like, you know what, I want to see my family a little bit more. I want to live a life outside of the situation. So you like said, I love the phrase YouTube University. I use that one too a lot. But you found the right mentor after going through that, and we've all done that. One of the things about Entrepreneur 101 is we spend way too much money on all kinds of courses, PDFs, you name it. We're chasing everything, and as much as I would say I wish we didn't do that, I think for a lot of us, we kind of need to in a way, just so we can really hone in on what we really want to do. But you were fortunate to find this mentor to say, okay, let's start off, let's get back to the basics. Here's the first ingredient, here's this, and slowly build up a way that then created that lifestyle for you could say, you know what, never gonna sell a car again. That
And I
they
literally
but
I told people that too. I told them, I was like, "Man, I'm not selling another car." And you can imagine with the career I have, like I've had, ton of calls and I had to field calls like, "Look, man, like I'm out of it." Like it got so bad to the point where like family members and stuff and call next me, like advice on the car. I'm like, "Man, I don't know." Like I'm literally when I say I got out of that world, like I literally got out of that world, and I owed it to myself first, and then I of course owed it to my family because of course I've cheated them this long. So it's at some point like, hey man, let's right the ship. And I'll tell you with that mentor too, after spending like I told you, 40, 50 grand on education and not having a deal for almost a year. That first deal I did get, I will say it made me about $25,000, and I was like, okay, well, I can do this. Now this become worth it. And this what I want to do, more of and control my own time. So like now, um earlier today I don't know if you've heard of it, but I was in kinder music with my 9-month-old daughter. I know I told you about my 16-year-old, but I've started over. Call me crazy. So this little bit of hair, I don't know how much longer it's gonna last. But we'll see. Um, but we went to kinder music today, but it's stuff like that where I just carve it out on the schedule. And I'm at the point where time wise, I don't have to tell my kids no. Of course, I teach them discipline about other things, but it's like, hey, like, can we this? Can we go here? Like, can we do this? And for the majority of the time, if it lines up, it's a yes, because now I've given someone else, 20 years of my life, and now it's time, like I say, to appeal to my family. So when they ask me to do something, we can just carve it out. I don't have to guess about it. I don't have to ask the boss. But again, I tell people not everybody is going to be in a position to leave your job. I mean, hell, it took me 20 years, you know? So, but I
that's
do figure for everybody that should be the end goal for whatever it is for you. For some people, it's not family. For some people, like you say, it's a great hobby of theirs that they've been meaning to get to, or just anything that their life desires. So that's
that's
pretty big.
yeah, you find your what, and we know, the Simon Sinek start with why, but find your what. What is your what? What is important to you, and you designed it. You said it took you a long time to get there, and results may vary, depending on what people want to do. It may take longer, and as you mentioned a moment ago, the entrepreneurial world is not a easy thing. I mean, not so much applicable to you, but to many others, where they're leaving a 9 to 5 type of job and they're going to 5 a.m. to midnight type of thing because you're just doing everything. You were already basically doing that before, and you said, let me add this side gig to it as well. Sleep, it's overrated. I don't need it. But you invested in it. And even, we made a comment about, spending all the money on the courses and the things like that. That's not just like investing in life or investing in the stock market. Yeah, you're going to have some wins, you're going to have some losses. There's going to be some things that you're going to take away from some of those courses that you'll remember. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But what happens, and you mentioned it, we're trying to learn everything because we don't want to miss out on something. We're afraid, well, if I don't, get, if I don't get this one, or if I don't pay attention to this one, then I may not be able to be successful. So we start, negative self-talk to ourselves, where, and I
And
find,
a lot of that negative self-talk, a lot of times we get ourselves just all bogged down or worried or concerned. And probably I venture to say 95, 99% of the time, none of that crap it ever happens. It never happens. We've gotten all in a tizzy, and we're worried about, hey, XYZ, and worried about stuff down the line and the what ifs and all this stuff. And we literally will like bog our mind down about something that's happening in the future that hadn't even happened to us yet. And a lot of times when people, when they're saying like, okay, well, when it comes to entrepreneurship, and they'll say, okay, well, what if it doesn't work? And I was just, what if it does? What if it does? Like, if you start to think about it like that is one of the greatest feelings that I get. Like, my FOMO now is missing one of my boys' football games or basketball games or anything like that. Mike and Mateo, they got something coming up. I want to make sure I'm there. And it that's definitely FOMO for me. But a lot of times the stuff that we're concerned about, it never even happened to us. It's all in our head. So
yeah, it's, yeah, we negative talk ourselves thinking, oh, this won't. And I love how you said, what happens if it does? And focus on that, because it's, our brains, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, are designed to protect us. And in many times that we don't want you to get hurt. So they start telling you, oh, this could blow up. You probably shouldn't do it, kind of thing. And the risk takers are the ones that have created everything that we have, all the technology, everything that we use today, everything, literally, from glass that I drink my tea out of, or computers, or the lighting, or anything like that. All were created by people that took risks. And, yeah, you could have easily, finished out your career in the auto industry. People still buy cars, and you would have, you were successful. And I know a lot of people were probably like, what do you mean you're not selling cars anymore? Or like you mentioned, they call and ask you for, car advice and things like that. It reminds me when, my first career was in accounting, and, I worked for a CPA firm. So did taxes and, accounting, financial statements and things like that. And I would get, tax questions from people. And, I left that sector in 1995, to date myself a bit. And I get calls, 2000, 2001, the new tax code's out. What do you know about it? It's like, I haven't looked at a single iota of a word in that thing, much less a sentence. And I have somebody do my taxes for me. I don't know. And they're like, you don't do your own? No, I mean, I went, I mean, it's like it'd be the point if you were so disgusted with cars, you're like, you know what? I'm taking public transit. I'm never driving a car again. And there are, yeah, so, if you're assuming you're in an area that has reliable transit, and, some areas more so than others. I grew up in Detroit, that you go public transit, they're like, what? It's like, it exists there. It's better than it used to be when I was a kid, but it's definitely not going to be New York or London or Chicago quality, because, well, there's the auto company there, and they don't want you taking transit. They want you to buy cars because, well, that's how that works. So I get it. I understand the dynamics of everything. But in closing, I think, the lessons we've shared today, have been kind of a entrepreneurial journey. But and we really didn't dive into this too much, but eh, real estate, much like cars, is one of those things that people need.
always.
Yeah, and real estate more so than cars, because if we flying cars or self-driving cars, things like that, where we're not going to own cars anymore. We're just going to walk out to our front porch, and we'll hail a self-driving car, or do it on our app, and it shows up at our porch and drives us wherever we want to go, kind of thing. We pay a monthly fee or something like that. Those days are probably coming.
Probably
But
better for sure.
but on the flip side of it, you just left a home to go out and do that. So we need shelter. Food, clothing, shelter. It doesn't say cars in there. Food, clothing, shelter. So don't think food's going away. Clothing, hopefully we still have it, because depending on the climate, it's more or less depending on what day it is. Shelter we always need. So the investing side of things is so critically important. So what I'd love you to do is just share where people can find you and find out a little bit more about the real estate and the wholesaling stuff and all of that stuff that you're doing, so I can drive them to take a look at all of that stuff, because you've been successful. You were able to leave a successful career to launch another one. So why don't you share where people can find you and some information on that?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, but before I go into that, I want people to know, like, it didn't like I wasn't scared, because you talking about a 20-year career when that's all you've known. It was literally all I've known, and you can imagine as a general sales manager, the pay is pretty lucrative, so you go from that to having that security to just being out on your own, and that's why I wanna offer something special just for your listeners where they can kinda get in, kinda risk-free too. They can find me on Facebook, just with my name is Robert Howard. That's Robert. Last name Howard is pretty common. Probably a ton of them come up, but you'll see me in a picture of a light pink suit and a white collared shirt. That's how you know you got me. And if they will send me an inbox that says jump, that's all I only said jump. Because I tell people, everybody get to the edge and you get all your information and all that, but you don't move. If they send jump to my inbox, what I'll send them my script that I use for my calling to be able to get properties under contract. I will actually give them access to the many videos that explains what wholesaling is, how to talk to a realtor, and basically a chance for them to get their feet wet too, because that's my way of paying it forward, the same way somebody did it for me. So
That's awesome.
the three.
That's awesome. I'll definitely have that, and I'll find the exact link, and I'll put the direct link in the show notes, so that way they'll go right to the pink suit. And then I definitely encourage people, and don't forget the word, and I'll have it in the show notes too, jump, like the Van Halen song, jump. And just take the opportunity to learn about it. Won't cost you anything but your time. If at minimum you'll have a new skill set, and you'll learn some things, and when you're out with friends or colleagues, you can share something, and they may go, you know what, that's actually what I'd love to do. And you can point them in that direction. That, who knows, you might impact other people's lives just by telling them about this opportunity. So Robert, love this conversation, really appreciate you, and thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.